My name is Delia, and I am 63 years old. I still remember the sound of that plate shattering on the kitchen floor. The white ceramic pieces scattered around my feet, like broken promises. My daughter-in-law stood there, her face twisted with rage, screaming those words in front of 5 of her friends. "Old Shrew, get out of my life." Those words echoed in my mind for days. But what Meredith did not know was that the following Monday, I placed a letter on the breakfast table. That letter changed everything. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below and let me know your city or country. If you believe that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their age, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Now, let me take you back 3 years to the moment when this journey began. My husband Harold passed away on a quiet autumn morning after 40 years of marriage. One moment he was sitting at the breakfast table, reaching for his coffee cup, and the next moment he was gone. The doctors said it was his heart. I always thought Harold had the strongest heart of anyone I knew. He loved deeply, laughed freely, and never once raised his voice at me in 4 decades. Losing him felt like losing half of myself. The house we shared in Connecticut suddenly felt too large, too empty. Every room held memories that both comforted and haunted me. The kitchen, where we danced to old records while cooking dinner. The garden, where Harold spent Sunday afternoons growing tomatoes he was so proud of. The bedroom, where we whispered our dreams and fears to each other in the darkness. After he died, the silence in that house became unbearable. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room, counting minutes that stretched into hours. I had retired 5 years earlier from my job as a high school English literature teacher. For 32 years, I taught young minds to appreciate Shakespeare and Hemingway. I loved that career, loved watching students discover the power of words. But retirement had been Harold's and my time. We traveled, we gardened, we grew old together. Without him, I did not know what to do with myself. Our son Derek was 37 years old, a software engineer working for a technology company in Hartford. He had always been a gentle soul, kind and thoughtful, though perhaps a bit too agreeable. He avoided conflict like some people avoid bad weather. Derek married Meredith 4 years before Harold's death. She was 34, a marketing manager at a real estate company, ambitious and confident. They lived in a beautiful 2-story colonial house in West Hartford, about an hour from my Connecticut home. 6 months after Harold's funeral, Derek called me on a Sunday evening. His voice carried that familiar worry he always had when he thought about me living alone. "Mom," he said, "Meredith and I have been talking. We have a spare bedroom here, and we hate the thought of you being all by yourself in that big house. Why do you not come live with us?" Before I could respond, Meredith's voice came through the phone. She must have been standing right next to him. "Mom, it would be wonderful to have you here," she said, her tone sweet as honey. You should not be alone. We want you to be part of our daily lives." I felt tears forming in my eyes. After months of loneliness, after months of talking to Harold's photograph, because I had no one else, this invitation felt like a lifeline. My son wanted me close. My daughter-in-law seemed genuinely welcoming. Perhaps this was the answer I had been searching for. There was one thing I never told Derek and Meredith. I did not sell my house in Connecticut. Instead, I found reliable tenants and rented it out. The monthly income went directly into my personal savings account. I let them assume I had sold it because I wanted to keep that option open, that escape route just in case. Looking back, that decision saved my life. When I moved in with Derek and Meredith, I brought only what mattered most to me. The family photo albums documenting 50 years of memories. My mother's fine china set that had been passed down through 3 generations. And Harold's antique rocking chair, the one he sat in every evening while reading his newspapers. These were not just possessions. They were pieces of my history, my identity. The first month was wonderful. Meredith helped me arrange my new bedroom, picking out curtains that matched the bedspread. We spent afternoons cooking together, and I taught her my grandmother's apple pie recipe. She seemed genuinely interested in learning, taking notes on a little pad she kept in the kitchen. Derek would come home from work to find us laughing over a shared joke, and his face would light up with happiness. I made myself useful around the house. I cleaned, did laundry, prepared dinners. I tended to the small garden in the backyard, planting flowers that reminded me of my own garden back home. For the first time since Harold died, I felt like I had a purpose again. I was not just existing. I was contributing, being part of a family. Looking back now, I realize those first few weeks were like the calm before a storm I never saw coming. The change began subtly about 2 months after I moved in. Meredith's comments started as small things, remarks that seemed almost harmless if you did not pay close attention. But I paid attention. After 32 years of teaching teenagers, I had developed a sharp ear for hidden meanings. One evening, I prepared a beef stew recipe that Harold had always loved. The kitchen filled with the rich aroma of slow-cooked meat and vegetables. When Meredith came home from work, she lifted the pot lid and wrinkled her nose. "This is interesting," she said, glancing at Derek. "Remember how your mom used to cook? I guess tastes change with age." Derek said nothing. He just shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Another time, I wore my favorite dress, a floral pattern, that Harold had bought me for our 30th anniversary. I felt pretty in it, confident even. Meredith looked me up and down and let out a small laugh. "Oh," she said, "that style is so vintage." The word vintage dripped from her lips like an insult wrapped in silk. These comments were always delivered with a smile, always phrased just vaguely enough that I could not confront them directly without seeming oversensitive. But each one was a tiny cut, and the cuts were adding up. Then came the incident with Harold's rocking chair. I came home from a walk one afternoon to find the living room completely rearranged. New furniture had replaced the old everything sleek and modern. But something was missing. "Where is the rocking chair?" I asked Meredith, trying to keep my voice calm. She did not even look up from her phone. "Oh, that old thing. It is in the garage. It just did not fit the new aesthetic. I am sure you understand." I walked to the garage with trembling hands. There it was, Harold's chair shoved into a corner and covered with a dusty tarp like discarded junk. I stood there for a long time, touching the worn wooden armrests where Harold's hands had rested for 40 years. I wanted to scream, to demand she bring it back. But I swallowed my pain. I did not want to cause problems. When I tried to talk to Derek about what was happening, he was always too busy, always distracted. He worked late hours, sometimes not coming home until after 9. When I finally found a moment to mention the rocking chair, he sighed heavily. "Mom, Meredith is just trying to make the house nice," he said, his eyes still on his laptop. "Do not take it personally. Do not take it personally." How could I not take it personally? That chair was the last physical connection I had to my husband's daily presence. But Derek did not want to be caught between his wife and his mother, so he chose to see nothing. As the months passed, I noticed a shift in my role within the household. Meredith began assigning me tasks one by one until I had essentially become the unpaid housekeeper. Laundry, dishes, mopping floors, scrubbing bathrooms, cooking every meal. "Since you are home all day anyway, it makes sense, right?" she would say. I did everything without complaint. I told myself I was contributing to the family, earning my keep. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I was not being treated like a family member. I was being treated like the help. And the worst part was that no one ever said thank you. Derek's birthday arrived, and I wanted to make it special. I spent the entire day preparing his favorite foods: roasted chicken with rosemary garlic, mashed potatoes, fresh green beans, and a chocolate cake from scratch. I set the table with candles and even bought a small bouquet of flowers. When Derek came home, I expected him to smile. Instead, he looked uncomfortable. "Mom," he said, "Meredith already made dinner reservations. She planned something special at that Italian place downtown." Meredith appeared behind him, car keys in hand. "Ready to go, babe." They left without another word. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by food that no one would eat, candles that no one would see. That night, I ate alone at the table I had so carefully decorated. The chocolate cake sat untouched on the counter for 3 days before I finally threw it away. That night, I wondered for the first time if I had made a terrible mistake. A year passed and my world grew smaller and smaller. Meredith stopped including me in anything that happened outside the 4 walls of the house. When she hosted dinner parties, I was expected to prepare the food, but never to join the guests. Mom usually prefers staying in her room. I overheard her tell visitors once. She likes quiet. I was in my room, but not by choice. I had become a secret, something to be hidden away. The friends and colleagues Meredith invited over never even knew I existed. Back in Connecticut, I had a circle of friends I had known for decades. But the distance made visits difficult. and phone calls felt hollow compared to real connection. Meredith never suggested I invite anyone over. The message was clear. This was her house, her life, and I was merely tolerated. The verbal attacks became bolder as time went on. One evening at dinner, I accidentally knocked over my water glass. It was not even a big spill, just a few drops on the tablecloth. Meredith slammed her fork down. God, can you be more careful? This is exactly why old people should not be around nice things. I looked at Derek. He kept his eyes on his phone, pretending he had not heard. Another time, I simply asked about their plans for the upcoming weekend. Meredith rolled her eyes so dramatically, I thought they might get stuck. Does everything have to involve you? She snapped. We need our space. After that, I started taking my meals in my bedroom. It was easier than enduring the contempt at the dinner table. I would sit on my bed with a tray, eating in silence, wondering how my life had come to this. One night, I could not sleep. I walked downstairs to get some water and heard voices in the living room. Derek and Meredith were talking, and they had not heard me approach. When is she going to kick the bucket? Meredith said. That money from her house sale would really help us pay off the mortgage faster. My heart stopped. Meredith, that is, my mother, Derek replied. But his voice was weak, unconvincing. So what? She is useless around here anyway, just eating our food and taking up space. I cannot wait until she is gone. I stood frozen in the hallway, unable to move. They were waiting for me to die. They thought they would inherit money from a house I had supposedly sold. They saw me as nothing more than a burden, an obstacle to their financial goals. I crept back to my room and closed the door quietly. That night, I cried until there were no tears left. I looked at myself in the mirror the next morning and barely recognized the woman staring back. I had aged 10 years in 12 months. My eyes were hollow, my cheeks sunken. The constant stress had taken its toll. I began to doubt myself. Maybe Meredith was right. Maybe I was useless. Maybe I was just taking up space. These thoughts circled in my mind like vultures. But then I would read Harold's old letters, the ones he wrote me, during the early years of our marriage when he traveled for work. One line in particular stayed with me. Delia, you are the strongest woman I know. Never let anyone make you feel small. I clung to those words like a drowning person clings to a rope. I decided to try one more time. I would cook a special dinner show Meredith, that I was valuable, that I could contribute. I poured all my remaining hope into one last effort. I told myself that if I just tried harder, showed more love, things would change. I was wrong. The Saturday that changed everything began like any other day. Meredith announced at breakfast that she was hosting a dinner party that evening. 5 of her friends from work were coming over. Make yourself useful for once, she said to me. Cook something decent. I spent the entire day in the kitchen. I roasted a chicken with fresh rosemary from the garden. I made creamy mashed potatoes and a crisp green salad. For dessert, I baked my grandmother's apple pie from scratch, the same recipe I had taught Meredith. during those first happy weeks. The kitchen filled with wonderful aromas, and for a moment, I felt like my old self again. Derek had left for a business trip that morning. Part of me wished he was there, but another part knew it would not matter. He had stopped defending me long ago. The guests arrived at 7. 5 women, all younger than Meredith, dressed in expensive clothes and carrying bottles of wine. I watched from the kitchen as Meredith gave them a tour of the house, showing off the new furniture, the renovated bathroom, the designer curtains. She never mentioned me. One of the women wandered into the kitchen and saw me putting the finishing touches on the meal. "Oh, hello," she said, surprised. "Are you the caterer?" Before I could answer, Meredith appeared and guided her friend away. "We have some help around the house," I heard her say. I was not a caterer. I was not the help. I was the mother of the man who owned this house. But to Meredith, I was invisible. Dinner was served. I stayed in the kitchen listening to their laughter, their chatter about promotions and vacations and expensive handbags. I made myself a small plate and ate standing at the counter like a servant. When the main course was finished, I brought out the apple pie. The golden crust glistened under the dining room lights. One of the women took a bite, and her eyes widened. "This is absolutely incredible," she said. "Meredith, who made this?" I opened my mouth to answer, proud of my creation. But Meredith spoke first. "Oh, just something from the store," she said dismissively. Something inside me shifted. After everything I had endured, after all the silence and the swallowed pride, this was too much. I could not let her take credit for my work while pretending I did not exist. "Actually," I said quietly, "I baked it this morning." The table went silent. Meredith turned to look at me, and the sweetness drained from her face, like water down a drain. Her eyes turned cold hard. The guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. I reached for a clean plate from the stack on the sideboard. I was going to serve myself a piece of pie. Just one piece. I had earned that much. Meredith stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. She crossed the room in 3 quick strides, snatched the plate from my hands and threw it on the ground. The sound of shattering ceramic echoed through the silent room. "Old Shrew!" she screamed, her voice shaking with rage. "Get out of my life! I am so sick of having you around, ruining everything." I stood there surrounded by broken pieces of white ceramic, too shocked to move. 5 pairs of eyes stared at me. Not one person spoke. Not one person defended me. A few looked down at their laps embarrassed. Others simply watched like spectators at a disturbing show. "Go to your room," Meredith hissed. "You are embarrassing me." For a long moment, I did not move. I looked at this woman who had taken everything from me: my dignity, my peace, my relationship with my own son. I looked at the broken plate at my feet, and I saw my broken life reflected in those jagged pieces. Then I straightened my spine, I lifted my chin, and without a single word, I turned and walked away. I walked slowly, deliberately, refusing to run or stumble. I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Only when I closed my bedroom door behind me did I allow the tears to fall. But something else happened in that moment. As I sat on the edge of my bed, hands trembling, I felt a shift deep inside me. The woman who had spent 63 years being kind, being accommodating, being patient to a fault, that woman finally woke up. I looked at the photograph of Harold on my nightstand. I could almost hear his voice. "You are the strongest woman I know. Never let anyone make you feel small." I opened my bedside drawer and pulled out a folder of documents I had kept hidden for 2 years. Legal papers, property records, the truth that Derek and Meredith had never bothered to discover. I had been patient, I had been kind, but kindness without boundaries is just self-destruction. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the small desk in my room, reading through documents and making decisions. By the time the sun rose on Sunday morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. There were secrets I had kept, things I had never told Derek or Meredith. Now, it was time to reveal them. The first secret was about my house in Connecticut. I had never sold it. The rental income had been depositing into my personal account every month for 2 years. Derek and Meredith believed that money was gone, spent on living expenses, or sitting in some joint account they would eventually inherit. They were wrong. The second secret was bigger. The house we were living in, this beautiful colonial in West Hartford, did not belong to Derek and Meredith. It belonged to me. Harold had purchased this house as a wedding gift for Derek 4 years ago. He put down a substantial payment and took care of the mortgage paperwork. But Harold was a careful man. He kept the deed in my name, with the intention of transferring ownership to Derek. Eventually, perhaps, when Harold and I passed away, or when Derek proved he could manage such a responsibility. Harold died before that transfer ever happened. Legally, I owned this house. Derek and Meredith had been living in my property, treating me like an unwanted guest in my own home. The third secret involved Meredith's career. 4 years ago, she applied for a marketing position at her current company. What she never knew was that the director of that company had a daughter I taught for 3 years in high school. When the director mentioned they were considering a young woman named Meredith for a management position, I wrote a glowing recommendation letter. I praised her ambition, her intelligence, her potential. That letter helped her get the job that launched her career. Meredith's success was built in part on my invisible support. On Sunday morning, I called Robert, our family attorney, for over 20 years. He had handled Harold's estate and knew all the details of our financial affairs. "Robert," I said, "I need you to prepare some documents for me, and I need them today." "Delia, are you sure about this?" he asked after I explained what I wanted. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I met Robert at his office that afternoon. He had everything ready: property documents proving my ownership of the house, a formal letter drafted on legal letterhead, everything notarized and official. Back in my room, I sat down with a pen and paper. The letter Robert prepared was cold and legal. I wanted to add something personal, something that would make Meredith understand exactly who she had been disrespecting. I wrote about the house. I wrote about her job. I wrote about every meal I had cooked, every floor I had scrubbed, every insult I had absorbed in silence. I wrote not with anger, but with clarity. Facts, not emotions. When I finished, I placed the letter in an envelope and wrote Meredith's name on the front in my best handwriting. Then I set it on my desk and waited for Monday morning. I looked at myself in the mirror before going to bed. The tired, defeated woman I had seen for the past 2 years was gone. In her place stood someone different. Not younger, not unbroken, but awake. Alive. I was not an old shrew. I was a lioness who had finally stopped sleeping. Monday morning arrived grey and cool, with clouds hanging low over the rooftops. I woke before dawn, took a long shower, and dressed with care. I chose my navy blue dress, the one Harold always said made my eyes sparkle. I clasped my pearl necklace around my neck and applied a touch of lipstick. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman ready for battle. I went downstairs and made coffee. The kitchen was silent except for the gurgling of the machine. I sat at the breakfast table with my cup and waited. Derek had already left for work, catching an early train to the city. It would just be Meredith and me. I heard her footsteps on the stairs around 8. She shuffled into the kitchen in her robe, hair-messy eyes still puffy with sleep. When she saw me sitting there, dressed and composed, she paused. "What are you doing up so early?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. I did not answer. Instead, I pushed the envelope across the table toward her. "This is for you, Meredith." She looked at the envelope like it might bite her. Then she let out a harsh laugh. "What is this? An apology letter? You finally realized your place around here." I said nothing. I simply smiled. Meredith rolled her eyes and tore open the envelope. She pulled out the papers and began reading. I watched her face as the words sank in. First came confusion. Her brow furrowed as she read the legal language about property ownership. Then came disbelief. Her eyes widened. She flipped to the next page, then the next. Then came fear. "This cannot be right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is," I replied calmly. "Every document is notarized and legally binding. You are welcome to have your own attorney review them." She read the part about her job about my recommendation letter. Her hands began to shake. The papers trembled like leaves in wind. Meredith tried to stand, but her legs seemed to fail her. She sat back down hard, the chair sliding on the tile floor. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself, nearly falling off the chair completely. Papers scattered across the table, some falling to the floor. "You cannot do this to me," she said. "I am not doing anything to you, Meredith. I am simply reclaiming what is mine." Her face cycled through emotions. Shock. Denial. Then, predictably, she tried to negotiate. "I will change," she said quickly. "I promise. I did not mean those things I said. We can work this out. We are family." I looked at this woman who had called me an old shrew, who had thrown a plate at my feet, who had wished for my death so she could inherit money that did not exist. Family. The word sounded hollow coming from her lips. For 2 years, I said, keeping my voice steady, I watched you look at me like I was less than nothing. For 2 years, I heard every cruel word, every dismissive comment, every snide remark. I cooked, I cleaned, I gave everything I had to this household. And you threw a plate at my feet and called me an old shrew in front of strangers. Tears began streaming down Meredith's face, but I had learned to recognize her tears. They were not tears of genuine remorse. They were tears of someone who had been caught, someone who was afraid of consequences. You have 30 days to find a new place to live, I said, standing up from my chair. I suggest you start looking today. I walked toward the kitchen door, then stopped. I turned back to face her one more time. And Meredith, the house in Connecticut that you and Derek thought I sold, I still own it. That is where I will be living, comfortably. I left her sitting at that table surrounded by the truth she had never bothered to discover. I grabbed my purse and my car keys and drove to a coffee shop downtown. I ordered a vanilla latte and sat by the window watching people walk by on the sidewalk. My phone buzzed. Derek was calling. I looked at his name flashing on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. For the first time in 2 years, I felt light. The weight of trying to prove my worth, of earning love, that should have been given freely, of shrinking myself to fit into spaces where I was not wanted, all of it was gone. I took a sip of my latte. It was delicious. The weeks that followed were not easy, but they were necessary. I moved back to my house in Connecticut. The tenants had just finished their lease, and the timing felt like a small gift from the universe. Walking through that front door after 2 years away, I felt Harold's presence everywhere. In the kitchen, where we danced. In the garden, where he grew tomatoes. In the bedroom, where we shared 4 decades of love. The first few nights I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. I was home. I began rebuilding my life piece by piece. I rejoined the book club at the local library, reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my time away. I started volunteering at the community center, teaching literature to underprivileged children. Their eager faces and curious questions reminded me why I had loved teaching in the first place. 2 weeks after I left, Derek called. This time I answered. His voice sounded exhausted, older somehow. "Mom, I am so sorry," he said. "I should have protected you. I should have stood up for you. I was a coward." I let his words hang in the air for a moment. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to tell him everything was fine. But that would have been a lie. "You are my son, and I love you," I said. "Nothing will ever change that." But love does not mean accepting abuse. It does not mean watching someone hurt me and saying nothing. He was quiet for a long time. Then he told me that things with Meredith had fallen apart. She blamed him for not warning her about the house. He blamed her for driving me away. They were talking about divorce. I did not feel joy at this news, nor did I feel sorrow. I felt something closer to acceptance. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. I hope you find what makes you happy, Derek, I told him. And I hope you learn to speak up for the people you love. 6 months later, I am writing the story from the sunroom of my Connecticut home. The morning light streams through the windows, warming my face. A cup of tea sits beside me, still steaming. Harold's rocking chair is in the corner, finally back where it belongs. My life is full again, though in different ways than before. I have new friends, women my own age, who have survived their own battles. We meet for lunch, share our stories, laugh at the absurdity of life. I teach 3 days a week at the community center, watching young minds discover the magic of words. Derek and Meredith finalized their divorce last month. He calls me every Sunday now. Our conversations are careful, tentative, but they are real. He is learning to stand on his own to speak his truth. I am proud of the man he is becoming, even if it took pain to get there. As for Meredith, I do not know where she ended up, and I do not need to know. I hold no anger toward her anymore. Anger is a poison that hurts the person carrying it far more than the person it is aimed at. I have chosen to let go. The lesson I learned through all of this is simple but profound. Kindness is a virtue, but kindness without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. It is determined by how you treat yourself. Letting go is not the same as giving up. Sometimes letting go is the bravest thing you can do. It means choosing yourself after spending too long choosing everyone else. I am Delia. I am 63 years old. I survived a marriage that ended too soon, a son who forgot how to protect me, and a daughter-in-law who tried to break my spirit. And I am still here, still standing, still strong. If you are watching this and someone in your life is making you feel small, I want you to remember something. You have the power to rewrite your own story. It does not matter how old you are, how long you have been in a bad situation, or how impossible change might seem. You deserve respect. You deserve love. You deserve to take up space in this world without apologizing for it. It is never too late to reclaim your life. Now, I have a question for you. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against someone who should have loved you? How did you find the courage? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your words might give strength to someone else who needs it. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss more stories like this one. And remember to hit that notification bell so you will know the moment a new video comes out. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you courage when you need it, peace when you find it, and the wisdom to know that you are always, always worthy of love. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.